Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to Shloka a Day. Today's shlokas will be shlokas 3 and 4 of chapter 12. Ye tvaksharamanirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastatham achalam dhruvam sanniyam yendriyagramam sarvatra samabuddhayah te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhutahite ratah. Word for word meaning, translation and purport. By His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ye, those who, to, but, aksharam, that which is beyond the perception of the senses, anirdeshyam, indefinite, avyaktam, unmanifested, paryupasate, completely engage in worshipping, sarvatragam, all pervading, achintyam, inconceivable, cha, also, kutastham, unchanging, achalam, immovable, dhruvam, fixed, sanniyamya, controlling, indriyagramam, all the senses, sarvatra, everywhere, samabuddhayah, equally disposed, te, they, prapnuvanti, achieve, mam, me, eva, certainly, sarvabhutahite, for the welfare of all living entities, ratah, engaged. Translation: but those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses, and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. So, just a recollection, the first two shlokas in this chapter begins with Arjuna asking a very important question that brings a conclusion to this middle section of Bhakti Yoga, which is more perfect, those who are worshipping your form or those who worship your formless aspect. And immediately Krishna says that those who worship my form, my personal form, they are most perfect. So here the Lord is now responding to the other side of the equation. What if those who worship him, but they worship this formless aspect, they believe that he does not have a form, or even if he has a form, they don't want to worship the form, they want to worship the formless aspect. Then the Lord is saying, Yes, these are the features of these individuals. If they are worshipping the impersonal absolute truth, that impersonal form of the Lord, or the impersonal aspect or concept of the Lord, that which is all pervading, that which cannot be conceived, that which does not change, that which is fixed and immovable, that is the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. So the Lord is actually defining impersonal worship here. What is it that they're worshipping? Something that cannot be seen, that cannot be perceived. Maybe it can be perceived, but not in its fullness. And how do they worship this? By controlling their senses and by being equally disposed to everyone. And such people engage in the welfare of all. And Krishna says, at last they achieve me, suggesting that ultimately they go back to God, but it'll take them some time. Prabhupada writes in the purport, those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Sri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. So it'll take them a few more births before they begin to practice bhakti yoga. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise, there is no perfect realization. Often, there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. So, which means that in order to practice bhakti yoga, you should have already practiced jnana yoga sometime in your life, previous lifetimes. In order to perceive the super soul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between a man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. So in this verse, from another parampara, so in this verse, Krishna does not speak anything negative about these people. They will also obtain me. But in the next verse, he will say, it is not so easy. Arjuna's question was, who is most united with Krishna? Krishna said that those who fix their mind on me are most united. Others, they will also come to me, but it is a complex process they have to follow. The process is basically centered on equanimity, on equal vision towards everything and everyone. A couple of commentaries written on this particular shloka by His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. An impersonal stereotype of impersonalists refers to the notion among some neophyte personalists that all impersonalists are blasphemers of Krishna. The reason we need to read this is it brings real clarity on the difference between some people who Prabhupada refers to as Mayavadis and some people when Prabhupada refers to them as impersonalists. So by reading this particular slide, you will have a very clear idea of what is the difference. However, the Gita itself differentiates among impersonalists, which means even among impersonalists there are different categories. So from shlokas 11 to 12 in chapter 9, that declares that those impersonalists who minimize Krishna's form as material, known as Mayavadis, are deluded and ill-fated. So among the impersonalists, there is one category called Mayavadis. What they do is they negate the personal form of the Lord and they think that the personal form of the Lord is material and it is not spiritual. They are deluded and ill-fated because they have essentially negated the Lord. So that is such an offense. In contrast, it indicates, which is here in these shlokas, that those impersonalists who simply seek the impersonal absolute without condemning the personal, they are known as Brahmavadis. They eventually attain their desire, but only after great labor. So among the impersonalists, there are two categories. The Mayavadis who denounce the personal form of the Lord. They don't think it exists, that it only exists when that Brahman comes into the material cosmos. Whereas Brahmavadis accept that the Lord has a personal form, but for whatever reason, their personal preference is to worship the impersonal. They are known as Brahmavadis. Between the Mayavadis and the Brahmavadis are considered to be better than the Mayavadis because the Brahmavadis are not negating that the Lord has a personal form. It's just that they are attracted to the impersonal. Whereas the Mayavadis are rejecting that the Brahman has a personal form. Nowadays, most people, even those who self-identify as spiritualists, are not serious seekers. Such dilettante spiritualists, dilettante means somebody who is not serious, who changes their mind easily, usually gather their spiritual conceptions from random readings or common cultural depictions. As such sources often portray that the personal manifestation is for non-intellectual sentimentalists and the impersonal for intellectuals, these fledgling spiritualists fancy themselves as impersonalists. They don't usually have any envy towards Krishna's personal form. To the contrary, they may even have some devotion for him. They frequently self-identify as impersonalists, not due to intention, but due to misinformation. If explained properly based on Gita wisdom, how the highest manifestation of the absolute truth is personal, such spiritualists often become personalists. We ourselves may have seen such nominal impersonalists before our spiritual mentors rescued us from our misconceptions. Even today in Bharatavarsha, there's a great faction in the country that believes that, that this Ram Mandir is also a deviation from Shastra. Shastra says that we have to worship the impersonal aspect of the Lord, and we should not encourage the worship of the Archa Vigraha of the Lord. So there are a category of people who don't believe in deity worship. Actually, there is a huge section of the population here who don't believe in deity worship. If we are to be similarly considerate in helping other nominal impersonalists, we need to avoid stereotyping them as blasphemers. Such stereotyping actually militates against our own philosophy. So, while Prabhupada heavily criticizes the Mayavadis, he is criticizing their philosophies, but he is not ever demeaning them personally. He is saying they have grossly misunderstood the scriptures, or they may be deliberately misleading others based on the scriptures. But for us neophytes, we have to be careful. We cannot stereotype. After all, personalism holds that not only Krishna, but also all living beings are persons. So impersonalists are not an homogeneous collective of blasphemy. They are distinct persons with individual conceptions and aspirations. So if you come across those who don't believe in deity worship, we should not condemn them. We can question their understanding of the scriptures, but it's not our position to be judgmental or condemn them as blasphemers, but by cautiously yet open-mindedly offering them on a case-to-case basis opportunity for spiritual elevation. We honor our personalist philosophy and also reflect the compassionate desire of our personal Lord to benedict everyone, even impersonalists. So when the Lord has not rejected the impersonalists, who are we to reject them? We may not agree with their philosophy. We may think that it is misinterpretation or misguidance of others, but at the same time, we don't blaspheme them. Spiritual knowledge is a therapy for the soul. Just as medical knowledge brings with it the responsibility to help the sick, so does spiritual knowledge. Every doctor takes an oath. I think it's called the Hippocratic Oath, that they will always do the best for the patient. They will always try to save the life. Similarly, when you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, it's like taking that Hippocratic Oath that says we will always do our best to save other souls, to connect them back to Krishna. That is our deep responsibility that we carry. The enlightened vision is expected to foster a benevolent disposition in all transcendentalists, not just devotees, but also impersonalists who are lower in the spiritual hierarchy. Of course, if you talk to an impersonalist, they think the bhaktas are the lowest in the spiritual, or somewhere in the middle, maybe. The Bhagavad Gita enjoins twice in 5.25 and 12.04 that those seeking the all pervading spirit Brahman strive for the welfare of all living beings. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Impersonalists need to be benevolent because their spiritual path requires them to see Brahman everywhere. Why is it that the Lord is saying they are equal to all? Because if they are supposed to see Brahman in everything, then they have to conduct themselves accordingly. Accordingly, they need to see others not as products of matter but as sparks of spirit and help them come from material illusion to spiritual truth. The path of bhakti spiritually enriches this vision in three significant ways. Others are not just particles of spirit but are parts of Krishna. All living beings are children of Krishna. We are all members of the same one family. So when we blaspheme others, we are blaspheming another child of Krishna. The reality towards which we can guide others is much sweeter and far more attractive than the passive peace of Brahman realization. That ultimate reality is the dynamic spiritual world permeated with ecstatic love for Krishna. For progressing spiritually, others don't have to depend only on their own discrimination and determination. By rendering devotional service to Krishna, they can get His grace in the form of higher wisdom and higher taste. Both these make it much easier to go from illusion to reality. Having such a rich spiritual vision, devotees are naturally benevolent towards everyone. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita 12.13 recommends such benevolence as the first among the characteristics of devotees. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna. By our daily devotional practices, we aspiring devotees can internalize the enlightened vision and benevolent disposition. So it's not just the impersonalists who see everybody as equal, even the devotees, as they make progress on the path of bhakti, they will also see all jivatmas as belonging to the Lord, but they will do their best to make sure that these jivatmas are also saved from this calamity of repeated cycles of birth and death.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.